what Shekhar got wrong, Shekhar made a very elementary mistake. So I think, I'm not sure if I should call him Shekhar or Mr. Gupta. He's been so friendly to me, but he also seems like I should call him, Guru Gupta ji, because he's taught me so much. But what Shekhar got wrong in his article, in his Cut the Clutter, he seemed to want to say, all right, some people may believe that all of this criticism of Indian democracy comes from left-wing progressive intellectuals, yet here are two right-wing think tanks, the Cato Institute and the Fraser Institute in Canada, Cato in Washington, Fraser in Canada, that these two think tanks, which can't be accused of left-wing bias, and he's correct, these are two conservative, free market-oriented think tanks, that they also rated India badly and also show a deterioration of Indian democracy. And he made a huge error here. So he said specifically, both that these two institutes in their Human Freedom Index report show that freedom of religion in India has declined dramatically under Mr. Modi. And then he said, and I'm going to quote Shekhar here, quote, "This has not been done by making phone calls to some intellectuals. Go to page 389 of this 435-page report, and there is methodology explained in detail under each head." Now, unfortunately, neither Shekhar nor his data journalist actually went to page 389 of his 435-page report, because if they had, they would have found out that this information on freedom of religion comes from two sources. It comes primarily from, drumroll please, the Variety of Democracies Institute report on Indian democracy, the VDEM Institute report. And I'm going to tell you what the VDEM says about the source of its data. Now, these are the data that go into the Human Freedom Index report. They're cited to VDEM. VDEM says that these freedom of religion indicators are based on, quote, "They are evaluative indicators based on multiple ratings provided by country experts. These data require evaluations about the de facto state of affairs in a particular country at a particular time. Country experts code these data. These experts are generally academics, intellectuals, that is 85% of them, or professionals working in media or public affairs, e.g., senior analysts, editors, and judges. About 2/3 are nationals of or residents in the country and have documented knowledge of both that country and a specific substantive area." In other words, 2/3 of the people who are answering the VDEM survey are Indian academics, most of them, or a few are senior media or public affairs figures. So, in other words, they are exactly making phone calls to some intellectuals, or more likely emails. So it was just very funny. And as soon as I heard Shekhar cite Human Freedom Index report, I thought, we got to talk about this. So it was very, very funny. Not only the freedom of religion, now the religion indices in the Human Freedom Index come from VDEM, and then one of the many items comes from the U.S. State Department Religious Freedom Report, which everyone in India knows that the U.S. State Department Religious Freedom Report is essentially an advocacy document that Christian missionaries who are very influential in the U.S. Insist on having statements put in the Religious Freedom Report against any country that it feels limits their missionary activity in any way whatsoever. Okay, so that's where that comes from. Then Shekhar went on to say there's also been a dramatic drop in freedom of association, assembly, and civil society in India, according to the Cato-Fraser Human Freedom Index. What is the only source for freedom of association, assembly, and civil society in the Cato-Fraser Human Freedom Index? The Varieties of Democracy Institute is the only source. So it's just the VDEM data being repackaged. Freedom of expression and information, Varieties of Democracy Institute is the only source. And then when they get to media freedom in the, again, the Cato-Fraser Human Freedom Index, where does media freedom come from? It comes from the Freedom House Freedom in the World report, which was one of the other reports I studied in my paper. So Shekhar wanted to say, look, it's not just these organizations Salvatore's talking about, VDEM, Freedom House, The Economist, who are criticizing India. It's also these conservative organizations. Well, those conservative organizations are simply pulling the data from VDem and Freedom House. They're not doing any additional analyses of their own on these metrics. So irony of ironies, elementary mistake, because those of us who study these things are aware that, the reason I focused on the 3 indices I did is that I'm very aware that the other indices are just indices of indices. So the other ones, like the Cato-Fraser index, just take the existing indices and repackage them, reweight them, and produce a report based on them. Shekhar wasn't aware. More troublingly, his data journalist wasn't aware. And very troublingly, although Shekhar specifically sent us, saying, read the footnote, he didn't read the footnote. His data journalist didn't read the footnote. You got to read the footnotes if you're going to be a quality journalist.